Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and this is a breakdown of Invincible Season 2, Episode 6, titled It's Not That Simple. But maybe things really are that simple if we could all just, learn to communicate and make sure that our bodies aren't host to parasitic alien hive minds. Let's dive into this episode for all the Easter eggs, animation details, and deeper layers of meaning that you might have missed. And just to note, we're going to try and avoid any comic spoilers for the rest of the season in case you haven't read the Invincible comic source material that this show is based on, so you don't have to worry about getting spoiled here. Be sure to check out nerdriot.shop for the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. You can grab a piece of merch inspired by the X-Men 97 series and rock that back-to-school look for Xavier Institute. Picking something up from the nerdriot.shop is a great way to support the channel and show off your favorite fandoms. Right now, I'm wearing just a classic t-shirt, which I think you can still get on the website. Or you just get a normal hoodie. Whatever you guys want. Whatever you want to wear. We pick up right where we left off last week with King Lizard holding Rex Splode at gunpoint in a nuclear military facility. Duplicate and Shrinking Ray are presumed dead after they took on the Lizard League with Komodo Dragon, Iguana, and Salamander also biting the dust. King Lizard monologues this.
But is it the brave man who survives? Or is it the one who waits until his opponent is too injured to fight?
Again, strategic thinking from King Lizard, but Rex doesn't want to hear it, so he tells King Lizard to just do it, and King Lizard does, in fact, do it. This is a hyper-violent way to start an episode, and after shooting Rex in the head, we get a few seconds of silence as the shock of what just happened sets in. The silence is only broken by the sickening sound of blood squirting from the hole in Rex's head, and another reminder of just how brutal the show can be. Before we can even process what has happened, we cut to space to check in on the other half of the Guardians, along with Invincible and Adam Eve, as they deal with the equally dire situation of the sequid hive mind controlling astronaut Russ Livingston. As Rudy works to turn his robot suit into a neurodisruptor to combat the sequids, the rest of the team runs interference by smashing as many as they can. Shapesmith steps up and uses his body to create a dome to protect Rudy and the unconscious Eve. Remember that his Martian skin is too tough for the sequids to pierce through, though it's still ticklish.
It tickles!
Once the disruptor is ready to go, Invincible and the Immortal have a little face-off over who's going to deliver the payload. This is going to be a tough episode for the Immortal, who is still struggling with his defeat at the hands of Omni-Man last season and whether or not he can trust the half-Viltrumite Mark. Mark tells the Immortal this.
I'm stronger and faster than you, and you know it!
It has to be tough for a guy who over the last, 1,000 plus years has been the strongest and fastest guy on the planet to no longer have that top spot. It's going to absolutely put him in his feelings. And I mean, he assumed the role of Abraham Lincoln at one point in his long, long life. And it's hard to see a younger guy just come up and be better than you. Mark gets the job done and frees Russ Livingston, but not before Rudy and Eve get infected. They're quickly freed from the hive mind with another blast from the disruptor, but this temporary infection could be important later, and we got more on that in a moment. With the sequids defeated, the Martian wants Shapesmith to stand trial for his actions, which is pretty much guaranteed to end with his execution, and Mark ain't having that. He doesn't want anyone else dying. The gang makes their escape to the Martian fighter with several Martians in pursuit. Mark goes all Captain Marvel and starts flying right through the Martian ships, and the song that plays here is Baby Drummer by the group Bad Nerves. After Mark's heroics, he and Eve share a hug that maybe lasts a little too long, and a humbled Immortal admits Mark did a good job. It's only gonna get a lot worse for you this episode, buddy. But while these adventures in space were happening, we find out that Rex isn't dead. Even a bullet through the brain isn't enough to stop this guy. And before you claim that this isn't realistic, people have been shot in the head and lived since the invention of the gun. This isn't a video game. A headshot is not necessarily an instant kill. As King Lizard brags to the authorities on the phone while walking past the pieces of deceased duplicates, Rex rises up and starts attacking. We get this classic ear-ringing shell-shock noise made famous in films like Saving Private Ryan as Rex gives it everything he's got. He even uses bony stump of a left hand to cave in King Lizard's face. He's running on pure adrenaline. It's also possible that all powered individuals in this universe are just a little bit stronger than a standard normal human. As the GDA comes in to rescue practically invincible Rex, we see our title screen that continues to crack and crumble. Then, out of Komodo Dragon's neck hole, we see a badly injured Shrinking Ray crawl out of safety, and she's alive! Now, I told you I wouldn't have comic spoilers in this video, but it's important to note that in the Invincible comic books, Shrinking Ray, R-A-E, is actually Shrinking Ray, R-A-Y, a male hero with the same power set. In the comic, Shrinking Ray is also killed in the same manner, being crushed to death inside Komodo Dragon, but in the comic, Shrinking Ray does not survive. They are dead. So while this show does follow the comics pretty closely, they're willing to make some significant changes here and there, and it will be interesting to see how Shrinking Ray goes forward in the series. Debbie is still caring for Mark's brother, who Debbie's decided to name Oliver after her father, Mark's grandfather. Oliver is already starting to talk, calling Mark bra bra and Debbie mommy, which she initially corrects but then later ignores. Cecil still wants the GDA to watch after the kid, pointing out their facilities are better equipped.
The GDA has an entire department dedicated to superhero children. We paint clouds on the ceiling.
But Debbie isn't budging. She doesn't want to raise Nolan's kid, but she will raise Mark's brother because he deserves all the family he can get. And of course, we can still see the ruins across the street. Cecil is even facing it. It's right outside, Cecil. Fix it up! We get the classic Pentagon establishing shot we've seen a lot in this series, only now there's a crashed Martian fighter on the front lawn. It'll be gone in another shot later in this episode, and you know the Global Defense Agency was eager to get their hands on that tech. Astronaut Russ Livingston just wants to go home, and he reveals the sequids don't sleep, so he didn't get to sleep. But there could be some other forces inside him besides sleep compelling him to want to leave the Pentagon. Eve comments here,
I'm gonna need an entire box of Q-tips to get all that sequid slime out of my ears.
Based on what happens to Livingston later in this episode, let's hope she uses more than Q-tips. The Guardians learn more about what happened on Earth while they're in space. The melancholy sounds of Dream Team by Aiden Knight plays, and I'm sure these Guardians are not feeling like the Dream Team in this moment. They can't seem to get the right balance after Omni-Man killed off the old Guardians of the Globe. We want to thank Geology for sponsoring this video, but also to thank them for making sure we look camera ready all day, every day. Geology's products use just a handful of powerful proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. If you don't know where to start, Geology can create a simple and effective skincare routine just for you. All you gotta do is take a 30-second quiz. Geology can help you fight acne, reduce oiliness, prevent wrinkles, combat dark or puffy under eyes, have smoother, hydrated skin, and target signs of aging. Right now, if you use code NEWROCKSTARS100, Geology will give you 100% off their award-winning skincare trial set. You also get an additional bonus offer of up to 30% off one hair, skin, or body product when you add it to your trial. That's 100% off plus an additional 30% off. Oh, that's a lot of offs. Just click the link in the description or go to geolog.ie/rockstars100 to get started. The Immortal mourns in a room of body bags we can assume contain only duplicates bodies, and I count 13 in this shot. And again, rough episode for this guy. Shrieking Ray is still healing up in intensive care. The perspective makes it a little difficult to tell in this shot, but given how much room appears still to be in the healing pod, I would guess Ray is still a lot smaller than normal, but bigger than she was when she first came out of Komodo Dragon. Eve observes them working on Rex, and after the talk they had last week and seeing him severely injured here, it's definitely bringing up some old feelings Eve had for her first serious boyfriend. We get this awesome match action transition when Invincible removes his mask, taking us from the GDA to Amber's dorm room as Mark updates her on what happened. This highlights the two sides of Mark's life that are constantly in struggle against each other, and how the sides are not truly separate as the feelings and consequences from one still affects the other. At Kate Shaw's, aka Duplicate's funeral, the Immortal provides the eulogy. He says this,
"Though her powers came from a family curse,
which reminds us that in this series, heroes get their powers from a wide range of sources. Unlike the series like The Boys, where all the powers come from Compound V, the world of Invincible encompasses many comic tropes, from aliens to science to mutations to magic and even multiversal energy. Kate does have a brother though, Multipole, who we've seen in the season in the GDA's prison. He's not at the funeral, but there is a woman in the back here who kind of resembles Kate. Kate's mom died during childbirth, so this could be a different relative. Immortal really misses Kate, and they clearly had a bond over the shared experiences of their many deaths. Immortal has given a lot of eulogies in his lifetime, but this one is really hurting, and he sheds a tear and asks Marcus, aka Black Samson,
why do I feel this way, Marcus? I loved many others before Kate. All of them died as well. But this is different.
This is a similar question Nolan has asked Mark before, wondering why, after all this time and companions lost over the years, why is it now that he suddenly has these feelings? And I appreciate how the show is approaching this question from different perspectives. Marcus tells Immortal it's because he loved Kate, and really, it's also Nolan's love for Mark that has caused him to question his role in the universe. Love is also just very powerful in this show, but really, you guys, all these men just need therapy, because they're all f***ed up. At a coffee shop, Mark and Amber catch up, and when they get their coffee, there are clearly two broken hearts formed in their coffee. It's awkward between these two. They even say it feels like a bad first date. We learn that Oliver can't eat solid food because Thrax and babies can't break down solid food, and this explains why he was spitting up the baby food Debbie tried giving him last episode. Mark offers,
sometimes I wish I never got powers. Then I could just be with you and forget about everything else.
This is a classic superhero trope, wishing you never had the power so you could have a normal life, most notably played out in Spider-Man 2 when Peter throws his suit in the trash, taken directly from the comics. Amber notes it's Mark's desire to use his powers for good that makes him attractive to her. They don't really have strong reasons to end things, especially as they both hold each other up on a pedestal, but it feels like this relationship just isn't long for this world, especially as Mark and Eve feel like they're getting too close. At Upstate University, Donald Ferguson brings back Rick, whom we last saw in season 1 episode 6 when D.A. Sinclair turned him into a cyborg. The fact that Donald, a confirmed robot replicant, is involved here makes me think Rick is the same thing. Luke McFarlane returns to voice Rick. William is so happy to have him back. They will later stop by a fountain put on campus to memorialize the victims of the D.A. Sinclair, and it's clear that Rick is not 100%. If that had happened to me, there's no way I'm going back to that school. Rex is awake, but is clearly still recovering from his massive trauma. He'll be getting a new hand, but I wonder if his powers will still work with that robotic hand attached to his body. We'll just have to wait and see. Rex seems to have had a breakthrough about his past behavior to women in his life, and it's clear he wants to be a better person. Maybe getting shot in the head was a good thing for this guy, which just feels really weird, and sure, Rex, go with it. Eve will later stop by with some home decorating magazines since they're Rex's favorite. Rex will tell Eve that Amber and Mark are on the rocks. Debbie interviews potential nanny candidates for Oliver, but she's certainly suspicious of Cecil's spies, like the sweet German lady Helga. And there's definitely some Miss Doubtfire vibes going on here. On the coffee table, you can see the Korean wooden wedding ducks. We saw them back in episode 2 of this season. These are a traditional Korean wedding gift, and they're usually displayed in the home with the ducks facing beak to beak, signifying the couple is having a harmonious relationship. These ducks, though, are not beak to beak, which I think is rather simplified assessment of the current state or turmoil of Nolan and Debbie's marriage. The next nanny candidate, April Houseman, just comes right out and says that Cecil sent her, but she's on Debbie's side 100%.
I work for you, Miss Grayson, not Cecil. Period. You're the boss, not him.
She's worked with gifted adolescents and knows all about Mark and Nolan. She says she only cares about the health and the well-being of Oliver, and I think this tactic worked on Debbie. April is voiced by Callista Flockhart, and while she seems well-intentioned, Debbie better still keep an eye on her, especially after what happened with the SOS group earlier this season. Cecil makes another pitch to Adam Eve to join the Guardians since they're down so many members, and Eve is still not into being a full-time member, but is still into helping out when needed. Amber stops by to talk with Eve about Mark, while at the same time, Mark stops by Arts to talk about Amber. Amber needs a friend she can honestly speak with, and Mark needs a father figure. We get a well-directed sequence where Mark and Amber talk to each other through other people. Eve and Art rightfully point out that they should all say these things to each other, and if they were just honest with each other, they might actually realize that they both feel the same way. And while they work well on paper and they each see each other's person as virtuous or selfless, maybe their lives just don't work well together, and it's okay to move on. Mark mentions to Art his father's last words about his books and how he can't find them at the library. Art mentions he has some of the sci-fi novels lying around after Nolan gave them to him as a tip and he never read them. Now, I might be reaching here, but this box that Art pulls out looks suspiciously like the exact same one that Debbie put on the curb in episode 4. Sure, a lot of boxes look the same, but it has the same design on the side. Maybe Art drove by to check on Debbie and scoop them up. I don't know why Art would lie about how he got these books, if only to prevent Mark from getting angry at Debbie for throwing them out, which Mark already knows she did, but Art doesn't know what Mark knows yet, so I don't know. I could be just reaching here. Anyways, regardless, some book titles we see are Lost Inside the Chasm to Oblivion and Hate Tribes on the Planet Wreck. Mark will dig through these books later in the dorm room, and most notably, The Man with the Invisible Gun, with a synopsis on the back that reads, "A man who wanted nothing more than to obtain the most powerful weapon in the universe." In it, we learn about the Space Rider and his Infinity Ray. It was said to emit an unstoppable energy wave that destroyed anything in its path. This certainly seems familiar to the weapon we saw the alternate universe version of the Guardians and Angstrom Levy trying to use against Nolan and Mark at the beginning of the season. Mark also reads Savage Planet, Savage Beast, which talks about Ragnars, a species that lives on a planet with extreme gravity that caused them to become incredibly strong. Strong enough to inflict damage on, say, a Viltrumite. And that's when Mark realized that his father may have hidden the secret to defeating the Viltrumite in sci-fi novels. Cecil checks in on the Immortal, trying to get him to take a vacation to Bermuda since he won't see any of the psych specialists the GDA has. And it's so nice that Cecil cares about the Immortal's mental health. But what about Debbie's mental health? You can still see the destroyed house across the street from the living room window. Just then, they get an alert of someone heading for Earth, and the Immortal takes off, immediately assuming it's Nolan coming back to finish the job. Men would rather fight an alien in space than go to but it's not Nolan, it's Alan the alien, and he's looking buff and he wants to talk to Invincible. Immortal is itching for a fight, assuming Omni-Man sent Alan, but Alan does not have time for this nonsense. Mark shows up and we get this great moment where Alan's telepathic communication implant means Mark can't talk directly to Immortal in space, so Alan has to relay things back and forth.
My thing only works between me and someone else, not between two other someone else's. It's a design flaw. I'm told there's an update coming.
Alan calls the Immortal a douchebag, which is now a confirmed universal term. He also calls out the Immortal as missing all the best parts of a beard, but that would be a mustache, which is what the Viltrumites roll with, so I don't know why Alan would like that part. I suppose he's just more into dissing the Immortal who poked him in the eye. Regardless, Immortal is made to feel useless once again, really putting a cap on his awful week he's having. As Mark and Alan head off to talk, Amber is feeling lonely at a college party, blasting Wild and Free by That Kid CG. She goes to text Mark, "I miss you," but then decides not to, and this relationship is just not long for this world. I like this poster on the wall though, for Frankendevil, a cross between Frankenstein's monster and the devil. The art style kind of invokes Mike Mignola's work on Hellboy. Mark puts a sock on his dorm room door so he and Alan can chat privately, and Alan points that out.
You know, on my planet, a sock on the door means somebody's
Mark confirms it's the same here, and Alan doesn't even flinch. My man is ready to do anything to save this universe. He does wind up destroying Mark's bed though, and William is probably going to think that him and Amber got down and dirty. Alan tries to recruit Mark to Thetis' cause, but Mark is tired of going to space at the moment since he's recently been there twice. He updates Alan on Nolan's capture and he shares what he's found in Nolan's books, and Alan confirms that while there is no real space rider, there is a space racer in the universe, though nobody has ever met him. Alan scans all the books to take in the info back to the coalition of planets, and Mark does confirm that when it comes time to fight, he will be there to help. We see that Nolan is still alive and being held in a Viltrumite prison in space, conveniently being given time to heal before he's executed. There are other beings held in this prison, and if they're all being held for rebellion against the Viltrumites, they could be more potential recruits for the coalition of planets. General Krieg offers Nolan an opportunity to rejoin the Viltrumite cause.
There is a path to redemption. Rejoin your people, Nolan. Let this not be your legacy.
Nolan only responds with stoic silence, and that's the power of love, people. This just pisses off General Krieg even more. Finally, we see Russ Livingston is back at home, a home that Shape Smith has left in complete disarray. Never let a Martian stay at your place, you guys. Just note to self. Suddenly, something stirs inside of Livingston and he coughs up a sequid. Very reminiscent of the end of Stranger Things Season 1 when Will started coughing up those slugs. And I guess the GDA didn't do a thorough job of making sure he wasn't still infected. And it makes me worry that Rudy and Eve could still be hosts. And I guess the GDA hasn't had much experience with sequids. As the sequid hive mind takes control, we cut to black. In the mid-credit scene, we see 4 armed tailors helping a man get fitted for a suit, and it's Engstrom Levy. He's back. Last we saw him, he was laughing manically and vowing revenge on Invincible after his multiverse Engstrom Levy linker was destroyed. After he's dressed, we follow Engstrom as he crosses through some universes, including this one that looks like the Walking Dead comic, fitting because Invincible Comics creator Robert Kirkman also created a Walking Dead comic. He finally ends in Times Square, and it looks like there's a billboard for a Science dog. Engstrom says,
It is good to be home.
I assume this is the show's main universe, which I don't know if it was this Engstrom Levy's original home, but remember, he's got a lot of minds scrambled up in his brain now, so this is definitely one of their homes. But it looks like we'll be seeing more of Engstrom Levy soon, and that is it for episode 6. Thank you, Brandon, for writing this breakdown. I can't wait to break down episode 7 for you guys next week. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lulu_Clemons. Follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.